days like this, stuck out here in the middle of nowhere, miles from the nearest department store, not a McDonald's in sight. You were right, Mum. It's hell.
But if you want to escape fast foods and Saturday shopping, Fiordland offers over 1 million hectares of wilderness, New Zealand's biggest national park. Te Anau is the starting point for most ventures into Fiordland. Every morning, legions of rugged individuals carrying 80-kilo backpacks and whistling brightly head off for a spot of trampin', fishin' and huntin'. But for those who prefer not to get quite so close to nature, Te Anau's also chock. A relaxed introduction to the park is a day's sailing on the Manushka. Murray and Frana Cardno spent 20 years building this ketch so they could help world-weary tourists escape from civilization. But the best way to see Fiordland is on foot. There's over 500 kilometres of tracks, anything from a half-hour stroll to a week or more. This is true rainforest. It can rain up to 200 days a year. The most settled weather's after Christmas, but that's when the crowds come. Fiordland's best-known tracks are the Milford, where booking's essential, the Routeburn and the Hollyford. Last year, the park's newest major track opened. The Kepler is 65 kilometres long and takes 4 days to walk. It's a tough one, needing above-average fitness, with a spectacular walk along alpine ridges on day 2. It's the only circular walk in Fiordland. It starts with a gentle tramp alongside Lake Te Anau, then there's a strenuous climb up Mount Luxmore to the first hut, with a tremendous view of Fiordland's lakes and mountains. The final day takes you along the shores of Manapuri on the return to Te Anau.
This is one of 3 DOC huts they've built on the Kepler. As you can see, it's pretty flash, it's got all the mod cons, but don't expect every hut in Fiordland to be like this. At the moment, there's not many people here because I'm such a fast walker, I got ahead of everyone else.
You can reach the first hut in 10 minutes by chopper from Te Anau. It's a great way to get a quick glimpse of all this grandeur without the pain. A 20-minute helicopter flight costs about $90 per person. The same flight in a fixed-wing aircraft costs about $50 each. Fiordland's possibly New Zealand's oldest tourist area. Way back in 1889, people were overnighting here at Morell's Grand View Guest House in Manapuri. It's still run by the Morell family and is full of character, tradition and great tucker. The Grand View's the perfect stop before catching the morning excursion onto Lake Manapuri from the rather ominously named Pearl Harbour. For $91, the well-patronised triple trip has a bit of everything. A launch trip across the lake, a tour of the hydro station on the other side, and a coach ride across. Like all Fiordland sounds, Doubtful is in fact a fjord, whereas a true sound is a drowned river valley. A fjord is carved out by glaciers as they march towards the sea. When they melt, they leave deep, steep-sided valleys which flood with seawater. An hour and a half's cruise on Doubtful Sound is the 3rd leg of the triple trip. It's a full day's outing, finishing back in Manapuri in time for those 5 o'clock cocktails. There are 14 fjords in the park, but apart from Doubtful and Milford, they were inaccessible except by tramping, charter boat or float plane. Water wings will take you to Dusky Sound for $120. You can be dropped off there, but there's only a very basic parkboard hut to shelter in and an arduous tramp back. This walk is only for the very experienced. Dusky, the largest fjord, is often claimed to be the most beautiful. Captain Cook spent 2 months here in 1773. 20 years later, sealers set up the first European settlement in New Zealand, here in Dusky. And while most of the seals are gone, the fish are still biting.
Hey, what about this then?
The bikes reach Milford in time for lunch on the Sound. The boat trip sets you back a further $30 plus food. It's a chance to compare notes on the Tour de Milford cycle trip.
Well, I must admit to being a bit nervous when I first got on the bike, but now it's sort of like over too soon. The The thing about it is that it is very steep, and there are patches where you hit gravel, and that's a bit scary. But down towards the end, you really get into the swing of it, and well, you start overtaking people and lorries and buses, and it's really fantastic. I'm a beginner, but these two ladies are real experts on bikes. How did you find it?
Yeah, I think it was nice, but if you drive a lot of bike, and I do it in Switzerland very much, and it's, yeah, for me a little bit, I don't know the name of it.
Easy?
Yes, it's easy.
Yeah.
Milford Sound is home to the country's largest fleet of tourist launches. They run continuously, doing the circuit down the Sound to the sea and back. For a more leisurely look, the MV Western Explorer will take you for a 3.5-hour excursion, including bushwalking and fishing, for $50 with lunch. Rudyard Kipling once called Milford the 8th wonder of the world, and it must be said he'd been around a bit. Today, it's the single biggest tourist attraction in Fiordland. Milford Sound's also the end point of the Milford track, and accommodation here is limited to the THC Milford, 35 rooms from $55 to $200, and a new budget facility about a kilometre up the road.
If you haven't got a couple of $100 to spend at the THC hotel, you can come here to the Milford Lodge. You can stay in the honeymoon suite or in a 10-bed dorm. It all costs the same, $15. They've got a restaurant, a sauna, and the only shop in Milford.
On the way back to Te Anau, take a detour down the lower Hollyford road to the start of the Hollyford track and Murray Gunn's museum and campsite. It's got the only petrol and food supplies for miles around. You can't miss it. It's well signposted, and you'll probably find Murray out front, painting the horse.
A couple of years ago, there's a lot more deer around than young people coming with rifles, and she was in danger of getting shot. They'll shoot at anything, so I thought I'd take horse on both sides. And I got round to putting horse on one side, and then I thought, well, it'd be fun to put cow on the other.
Murray's place is an old public works camp, and for a few dollars you can stay overnight in one of these huts. Murray Gunn's been in this valley for 34 years, collecting bits of local history for his private museum, and it's a real charmer.
I found that the big museums are just impersonal, and that's what intrigues people, that they can get, you know, there's about personalities in there, and that's what people like reading about.
It's a very intimate museum, focusing on a small band of farmers, explorers and eccentrics who first settled the area. Just down the road is the start of the Hollyford track, a 57-kilometre walk down the Hollyford Valley to the coast. Hollyford's promoters reckon anyone who can play a round of golf can walk this track. It's largely flat, following the Hollyford River and Lake Makiro to the sea at Martins Bay. You can freedom walk the Hollyford, or you can take a guided tour with the Hollyford Tourist and Travel Company. A reluctant walker can opt for up to 90 kilometres of jet boating. In fact, you can get away with just one day's actual foot slogging. Accommodations in 2 upmarket lodges with all meals provided, and we're talking whitebait, trout and venison here, not boil-in-the-bag stuff. This part of Fiordland was once a busy place. 130 years ago, settlers tried to establish a community here at Jamestown, but isolation destroyed that town within 10 years.
At one time, there were 100 people, but the last settlers moved out in 1928. The only thing left of the original citizens are 2 rather elderly apple trees.
These days, the isolation and vastness are what make Fiordland so extraordinary. Overseas visitors, who hang out here in great numbers, talk about Fiordland in superlatives. But many Kiwis have yet to explore their largest national park. In fact, the largest national park in the Southern Hemisphere.